Hi everyone and welcome to For the Craft. For this project I use these two Bandai model kits at 1:72 scale. First I had to convert the TIE Fighter pilot because I wanted to make his body hanging out of the spaceship. So I cut off his arms and legs and reattached them to his body in a different pose. Also I wanted to make the TIE Fighter having caught fire. For this purpose I took the light from this electric candle, which imitates the light of a flame, and I also used a flickering orange LED light. Of course I had to convert the model in order to make room for the lights and the electrical cables. I checked the lights in order to make sure that they work properly and then proceeded to paint the model. I also created some battle damages and fractured the main viewport where I wanted to place the pilot. I also damaged the solar arrays of the wings and the wing braces. I glued the electrical cables on the wing braces which would rest on the seafloor. Finally, I also created some damages that were made from the hits of the X-Wing's laser cannons, and which caused the TIE Fighter to fall and be destroyed. Next, I started creating the X-Wing Starfighter. I wanted to illuminate the X-Wing's thrust engines, so I used the red glass-colored paint for small LED lights. And of course I converted the plastic model's thrust engines in order to be able to fit inside the LED lights and the electrical cables. I didn't want the LED bulbs to be visible from behind, so I covered the exhaust nozzles with UV resin. Then I glued the thrust engines on the wings and very carefully drilled holes so I could pass the wires through the interior and hide the wires and the connections under the other parts of the spaceship. Finally, when this difficult exercise has been carried out, I tested the lights to make sure that everything works properly. Then I painted the X-Wing Starfighter and also created some weathering, some battle scratches and damages on the spaceship. In order to support the X-Wing Starfighter, I used a plexiglass rod, which I bent with my hot air gun and then sanded it to make it very thin and transparent. I didn't want the plexiglass support to be fogged by the glue, so I used this particular glue which prevents the fogging on the transparent plastics. Finally, I painted the pilot and placed him inside the cockpit. The next stage was to create the beach and the sea, which would also be the base of my diorama. I first made the basic shape with Styrofoam, which I then covered with a mix of plaster and Mod Podge. Then I created the groove on the sand where the TIE Fighter crashed with air-dried clay. I used the same clay to create the big rocks on the beach. In order to create the sandy beach and the sea bottom, I used PVA glue and natural sand. I also soaked the sand with PVA glue diluted with water. I first painted the rocks with a black color, and then I used a dry brush to give them shades of grey and brown colors. I also made a hole through which I would pass the electrical wires and the support for the X-Wing. Also, I added some stones and seaweed on the bottom of the sea. In addition, I created some burn marks at the crash site and started adding the various debris of the TIE Fighter. I also used these materials to create a little bit of ground and grass at the top of the rocks. Finally, I placed the TIE Fighter in its position . I created a mold with silicone and plexiglass, and I proceeded to the resin pouring. When the resin hardened, I used this material to create the surface of the sea. In the final stage of this project, I put the X-Wing Starfighter in its place, I used some higher grass to hide the plexiglass support, I connected the wires with the batteries, and my diorama was finished. So this is the Star Wars diorama, which the majority of you have asked during my recent poll, and as you know, I always try to satisfy my followers. I hope that you like the final result and that you enjoyed watching the making process. I also hope that you don't find it very cruel that I made the TIE Fighter pilot hanging out of the burning spaceship. Some people may think that he is dead, but other people may think that he is trying to get out of the spaceship and at the end he was saved. Any one of us can make up any story we want in our mind, and that's the beauty of a diorama. Please write me in the comment section below which outcome, which scenario you prefer best. As always, I would like to say a big thank you to all the supporters of my channel. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.